We are reading Two of Everything by Lily Toy Hong. Okay? Two of Everything, a Chinese folk tale, retold and illustrated by Lily Toy Hong. Once, long ago, in a humble little hut, lived Mr. Hacktack and his wife, Miss Hacktack. They were old and very poor. What little they ate came from their tiny garden. In a lucky year, when the harvest was plentiful, Mr. Hacktack had a little extra to take to the village. There he traded turnips, potatoes, and other vegetables for clothing, lamp oil, and fresh seeds. One spring morning, when Mr. Hacktack was digging in his garden, his shovel struck something hard. Bing! Puzzled, he dug deeper into the dark ground until he came upon an ancient pot made of brass. How odd, said Mr. Hacktack to himself. To think I have been digging here all these years and never came upon this pot before. I will take it home. Maybe Mrs. Hacktack can find some use for it. The pot was big and heavy for old Mr. Hacktack. As he stumbled along, his purse, which contained his last 5 gold coins, fell to the ground. He tossed it into the pot for safekeeping, and he staggered home. His wife greeted him at the door. Dear husband, what is that strange pot? What a strange pot. Mr. Hacktack explained how he found the pot. I wonder what we can do with it, said Mrs. Hacktack. It looks too large to cook in and too small to bathe in. As Mr. Hacktack leaned over to peer into the pot, her hairpin, the only one she owned, fell in. Aww. She felt around the pot, and suddenly her eyes grew round with surprise. Look, she shouted, I've pulled out 2 hairpins, exactly alike.
It's a magical pot.
And 2 purses, too. Sure enough, the purses were identical, and so were the hairpins. Inside each purse were 5 gold coins. Okay. Mr. Hacktack was so excited, he jumped up and down. Let's put on my winter coat inside the pot. Let's put my winter coat inside the pot. If we are lucky again, the pot will make 2 coats, and then we will both stay warm. So into the pot went 1 coat, and out of the pot came. They began to search the house and quickly put more things into the magical pot. If only we had some meat, wished Mr. Hacktack, or fresh fruit, or 1 delicious sweet cake. If we only had that. I want 2 cakes. Mr. Hacktack smiled. I know how we can get anything we want, she said. She put in 10 coins into her purse. Then she threw it into the pot. She pulled out 2 purses with 10 coins in each. What a clever wife I have, cried Mr. Hacktack. Each time we do this, we will have twice as much money as before. The Hoktoks worked late into the night, filling and emptying the pot until the floor was covered with
Money.
coins. Okay. Is that a good night?
Uh-huh.
If you like money, 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 money.
Money, money, money.
Morning came and off went Mr. Hoktok with a long list of things to buy in the village. Instead of vegetables, his basket was full of gold. Mrs. Hoktok finished all her chores and sat down to enjoy a cup of tea. She sipped her tea and admired the brass pot. Then, with a grateful heart, she knelt and embraced it. Dear pot, I do not know where you came from, but you are my best friend. She stooped over the pot and looked inside. At that very moment, Mr. Hoktok returned. His arms were so full of packages that he had to kick the door open. Bang! Mrs. Hoktok was so startled that she lost her balance and fell headfirst into the... Oh no, look at her, there she is. Mr. Hoktok ran over and grabbed his wife's legs. He pulled and tugged until she slid out onto the floor. But when he looked at the pot again, he gasped. 2 more legs were sticking straight out of it. Naturally, he took hold of the ankles and pulled. Out came a second person. She looked exactly like his... That's right. Uh-oh. We have a problem. We have 2 Mrs. Hoktoks now. The new Mrs. Hoktok sat silently on the floor, looking lost. But the first Mrs. Hoktok cried, I'm your one and only wife. Put that woman back into the pot right now.
No.
Mr. Hoktok yelled, No. If I put her back, we will not have 2 women, but 3. 1 wife is enough for me. He backed away from his angry wife and tripped and fell headfirst into the pot himself.
Now 2.
Both Mrs. Hoktoks rushed to rescue him. Each grasped an ankle, and together they pulled him out. There were 2 more legs in the pot, so they pulled out the other Mr. Hoktok too.
Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Just what use does Mr. Hoktok have for another? Mr. Hoktok cried angrily. This pot is not as wonderful as we thought it to be. Now even our troubles are beginning to double. But his wife had been thinking while he was yelling. Calm down, she said. It is good that the other Mrs. Hoktok has her own Mr. Hoktok. Perhaps we will become best of friends. After all, we are so alike, we will be a brother to you. Perhaps we will become best of friends. After all, we are so alike, he will be a brother to you, and she a sister to me. With our pot, we can make 2 of everything, so there will be plenty to go around. And that is what they did. The Hoktoks built 2 fine new homes. Each house had identical teapots, rice bowls, silk embroideries, and bamboo furniture. From the outside, the houses looked exactly the same. But there was one difference.
What?
Hidden in one house was a big brass pot. Of course, the Hoktoks were always very careful not to fall into it again. The new Hoktoks and the old Hoktoks did not become good friends. The neighbors thought that the Hoktoks had grown so rich that they decided to have 2 of everything, even themselves. the neighbors thought. Little Toy Hung, Little Toy Hung, Lily Toy Hung lived most of her life in Salt Lake City, Utah. She grew up in a large Chinese American family, the seventh of 9 children. She says she always knew she wanted to write and illustrate children's books. Mrs. Hong is married and lives in Utah, where she hopes someday to find the magic pot in her backyard. 2 of Everything is her second book. And that's the end for this book. Read every single day, guys, and wait for the activity.